Hello everyone and welcome back to Recollection, where every game has a story. And today I want to talk about a game that's more divisive. Everybody agrees it's pretty good, but nobody can agree on how good it is. Some it's their favorites, others it's just a mess and they can't play through it. And I want to talk about how all those are kind of valid, but for me personally, I ended up loving it. And that is, of course, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Felt kind of apt to give my thoughts on the original, considering we just got our re-release, remaster, remake, whatever you want to call it, in tow for the Switch now. But I want to talk about the original, because the thing is, I have not played Skyward Sword since it first came out. But when I did, I was utterly addicted. I played this game to death. I remember just sitting on my chair with the Wii remote and playing it non-stop and doing every little thing I could. I got every item, I got every heart piece, I did all the challenges, I did everything possible, and I don't normally do that for Zelda games. I consider myself a bit of a completionist, but not in terms of Zelda. I never bothered to get all the heart pieces and all the other stuff in Ocarina of Time. Never bothered doing Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, what have you. I typically don't do everything. I do everything I'm interested in, but if it's too much, I'm like, alright, I think I'm good. Like, I don't need to collect all of Agatha's bugs. Enough to get the decent reward and be like, okay, I'm set for now, and then move on. But for some reason, Skyward Sword pulled me in a way that I just was not expecting. And it's so interesting to hear it be so divisive because, I adored it. It's I will say right now, it's in my top 5 Zelda games. Granted, I have not gone back to it, so who knows if it still holds up. But in the memories, in the recollection of it, it is fantastic. And I think it found that balance between the more realistic style of Twilight Princess and the more cartoony style of Wind Waker. And, there's some weirdness with the faces with this one, the Link's lips, and there's some odd character designs. But it works for this world. It feels youthful and fresh, and I think that's a key point for this one because it is the beginning of the Zelda timeline. And of course, you can't talk about this game without mentioning the motion controls, and I did not have a Wii Motion Plus controller that was built in at the time, and I lost them now. I don't know where they went. I tried looking for them for this video, but I had the plastic bit that went over the classic Wii remote and had the little Wii Motion Plus attachment at the bottom, and that's how I did it. And that was a bit of a pain because it did drain batteries. I had to go through a lot of batteries charging them all, and it would just be like, all right, let's take this thing off, get the back off, change out the batteries, put this back in, plug it back in, here you go. And that was really the biggest problem that I had, because the motion controls themselves never affected me. Not to my recollection. I had no issues with it. The sword strokes worked. All the mini games worked. I never had an issue. It felt amazing at the time. I loved the puzzle elements of the sword gameplay. I loved how each of the items worked. The mini games were fun. It really used the whole package well, I thought. And it's so funny or weird or whatever you want to call it that I've seen so many people say otherwise, that it didn't. The motion controls never worked for them. It was a nightmare to deal with, and it just ruined the game for them. And I, to this day, still have no idea what is the cause of the difference between those people's experiences, whether it's the way it's set up or just their Motion Plus was off, or I don't know, some unknown factor that we just don't know about. Hard to say, but that has led to some divisive thoughts. And of course, the other reason it's, not nobody can really agree on this thing is because of the pacing. And I will agree, there are moments where it gets a little bit repetitious. Having to return to each area twice, not having the openness and being able to go wherever you want, the sky being a little bit empty. I get all those criticisms, but they never bothered me. Linearity in a game never really affected me too much, and I was so invested in the story and this world that it didn't quite, come across as, oh, this again. It was always just like, yeah, cool, let's do it. Let's check it out. And the only parts that would get me down is, of course, the imprisoned fights, because those didn't really change too much. But the first one was interesting because it was so weird and wacky, and the final one with Groose, again, great, good stuff. It's that second one that just feels like padding, like nothing is really accomplished by it, at least to my memories. Maybe there's some plot point sort for it, like something else going on, like introducing Groose to it that shows it's a bit of a threat and showing out what Link does in order to go through it and get that sort of change in him. That's possible, but it's still, because the boss fight changes so little, it's not that interesting. That said, there's a moment in here that's probably among my top in all of Zelda, and that's the boss fight against Galactos. And I just remember feeling like I don't feel the power fantasy of games too often. Like, you feel good about it, but you don't feel like I am a god, or I feel just like utterly amazing. There's a few here and there that pop up for me, but it's not something that happens too often. But the Galactos fight, where you cut off one of his limbs and pick up the sword and just go to town on that thing, slicing and dicing, I just felt so good. It's like, oh my god, this is incredible. I've never felt anything like this for a Zelda game, and it's thanks to the motion controls. I don't know. It's something that will always stick with me, and I love it about this game. And I really enjoy the lore, the story, the characters. It all clicks for me in a way that I was not expecting. I thought I'd like the game, but I was like, it was so all over the place. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but no, I loved it all. And I hope, I have not played the new Skyward Sword as of recording this, so I'm not sure if it succeeds with the new button controls and all its other quality of life influences that make it better, or whether it's if they successfully put the motion controls onto the Switch. It's hard to say. I'm hopeful. I'm probably going to pick it up because again, a fan of this game, but I think it's one worth checking out, almost more so than most Zeldas. It's so divisive that you kind of can't go by opinions. You can't look at somebody and be like, oh yeah, I trust them and that's how it goes. I mean, they could be right. For you, it's entirely possible, but it feels more like you have to really get a sense of for yourself. Because Fi was a bit annoying, but I never found her that annoying. It was, like any other companion in my opinion. But I just, there's a certain memory in me from playing this. It's of my original apartment that I'm no longer at now. And I had a comfy chair, and I just remember getting so snuggled up in it and having the motion controls ready and just being able to do my thing and just lose myself in this game for hours at a time. And I think that's the fond memory of this, is that I was able to do that, to lose myself in something for such a long amount of time, because that does not happen anymore. I have other things come up. Either life stuff that needs to be taken care of, or whenever I'm reviewing a game, I record in hour-long chunks. So I can't just lose myself in a game for 3-4 hours. I have to stop, reset the recording so I don't have footage corrupted, and then pick up. And that stop and start aspect of it makes it hard to really lose myself in a game sometimes. It'll still happen. It will still happen. Dragon Quest XI is a good example of that. But this, to me, is representative of that, where I truly lost myself in a game. And I think because I've just zened out almost, that's why I went for everything and enjoyed it all. So, I don't know. I just personally love Skyward Sword. I'm really hopeful that this port to the Switch is a good one. And I'm very curious how all of you think about Skyward Sword, because like I said, it's a polarizing game. So yeah, that's my experience with the original Skyward Sword. I'm curious about all of you. But of course, if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and if you really want to, want to throw a little extra our way, sorry, I'm bad at these intros or outros. You can check us out over at Patreon on patreon.com/gvgaming, where you can support us for as little as $1 a month and enjoy all of our content there, as well as all the extra goodies. Either way, though, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next week for whatever I decide to talk about. We'll see. Till then, everyone. Bye.